All right, all right. How you all doing today? It is good to see you on this Friday with This Week in Supervision, where we go over some of the things, the topics that we've talked about in supervision and help you out with growing knowledge and practice and in supervision. We're going to get on started because I've got a lot to cover. This was an exciting week. I really enjoyed presenting this topic and I want to share it with you. And I don't want to take too much time because I probably will, but let's just go on and get started. And we're covering the topic of emotional lability and shame, tools for healing complex trauma. Emotional lability and shame. Y'all know what that is. Emotional ability and shame, tools for healing complex trauma. All right. And so, as I mentioned, some of you all that may tune in from time to time may know how I generally start off my supervision. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and let you know how I started out. And what I did is I like to start off with test questions. My supervisees seem to like the challenge. I like the challenge too because I'm always learning new things as I go and sharpening up as I'm doing supervision. And so I want to go ahead and share with you the test question that we started with. I usually start with a test question or a scenario, and we're giving away the answers here. We're not trying to, but the first question that we started with, and I want to see if you know the answer to this, is which of the following, and what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, if we've been trying to get the supervisees acclimated to understanding how to approach someone who has borderline disorder. Okay, borderline personality disorder, what it looks like, treating those symptoms, identifying the symptoms, little tricks and things to help you to remember. We'll go over a little bit of that in this demo here. But let's start with question one. Which of the following is not a typical symptom of borderline or bipolar disorder, but is commonly associated with borderline personality disorder? So, which of the following is not a typical symptom of bipolar disorder, but is more commonly associated with borderline personality disorder? And for the sake of test prep, sometimes I think how the test questions start off can be somewhat not misleading, but kind of tricky. Sometimes I'm encouraging my supervisees to kind of pay attention to how it ends. Okay, or when it starts off with what's the best answer, keeping that in mind, but seeing on some of these questions how's it ending, and it says if we just looked at this and said what is more commonly associated, which of these symptoms is most commonly associated with borderline personality disorder, that's probably going to get us closer to the mark. And so that's what we did. I'll let them put the answer in the chat. And what we discovered was that the answer for this one is what? What did you guess? The answer for this one is actually D, chronic feelings of emptiness. Not going to go real deep into this because we have limited time, but impulsivity. As a matter of fact, and I'll go into the mnemonic. Impulsive is a mnemonic that we can use to help us identify some of the signs and symptoms of borderline personality disorder. We went over that last week when I presented in the live and with my groups on last week. So repetition is deepening the impressions is the goal, right? So impulsivity, but you know what? Impulsivity happens in both borderline personality disorder, and does that happen in bipolar disorder as well? Absolutely, it does quite frequently. As a matter of fact, when individuals are manic, they can be very impulsive. They have goal-directed behaviors. They have uncontrolled behaviors where many times they're going on shopping sprees. They might start spending all their social security. They go in sexing sprees and things of that nature, and they're very impulsive. And so we talked about the similarities there. Mood swings. Manic depressive. We used to know bipolar disorder previously as a manic depressive. They would say, oh, that person's manic depressed or what have you. Now it's been changed, over the years to bipolar disorder. When you look at manic, that means someone who's experiencing mania, who's really excitable many times. And then on the flip side, you look at depression. So that's the description of someone who has bipolar disorder. If you look at that description of bipolar disorder, you would say you can see where we might have mood swings and mood shifts as well in bipolar disorder, as well as in borderline. And then we get into grandiosity. I feel I'm most familiar with grandiosity, more referring to someone who has bipolar. As a matter of fact, the mnemonic we use, dig fast, G stands for grandiosity, and that's something that we go over in supervision as well. Oh man, we're 5 minutes in. So anyway, the answer to this one was chronic feelings of emptiness. Now, this is a symptom that we often will see with those individuals who experience borderline personality disorder, and so that was the answer to this one. We're going to go on and skip to the next one. Okay, so the next question here is, which of the following symptoms is least characteristic of bipolar disorder? Labile, intense interpersonal relationships. B, decreased need for sleep. C, distractibility. D, elevated mood. What do you think the answer is to that one? Okay, so if we look at the symptoms here, it's we can see right off, it's very important that we know, in order to answer this question, that we have an idea of what the symptoms of what are we looking at here, bipolar disorder, are, and then we can quickly get to the answer. And so we use mnemonics to help individuals get to that a little bit quickly. And I don't know if I used it here. So which of the following? Well, bipolar, dig fast, distractibility. I don't have time to go through it, but distractibility is D for one of the symptoms of bipolar. When we use the mnemonic dig fast, distractibility. When we look at the S, fast, the S in fast stands for sleep. So if you know that mnemonic, if you know the symptoms of bipolar disorder, we would know that, no, when we're talking about what's least characteristic, it wouldn't be distractibility, and it wouldn't be decreased need for sleep, because these are symptoms that are very prominent with individuals who have bipolar disorder. And we just talked about elevated mood for someone who is manic, and what manic symptoms are. We talked about that in supervision. How long do you have to have manic symptoms in order to meet criteria for bipolar disorder? And then we talked about how long we have to have the symptoms, and some other questions were asked about bipolar disorder and mania. Oh, that's another one. In order to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, would you have had to experience mania? And yes, you would have. Okay, and so anyway, the answer to this one is labile, intense interpersonal relationships. Let's go on and move on to understand some of these answers better. So we're talking about, and this is the mnemonic for borderline, and we may come back to that mnemonic. But I want to ask you the question: what is emotional lability? Have you heard of that? What is emotional lability? That came up in a number of our questions. What is emotional lability? And it's important to know that, because if you look at the profile, we're going back to borderline personality disorder. If you look at the profile, you notice here this mnemonic is impulsive. So if you know the mnemonic, then you know all the signs and symptoms of bipolar disorder. We talked a little bit about this. I mean, borderline personality disorder. We talked about this last week. But here, where we see labile, and I'm always saying that wrong, intense relationships, that is where we start getting into, and excuse this, I should have deleted this. This is where we get into better understanding, or trying to get an understanding for what this is, because sometimes we're just citing the symptoms but not very aware of what they mean, and that's going to be super important if we're going through the learning process with diagnosis. And then for our supervisees, they're going to have to take this exam soon. So when we're talking about emotional lability, are you familiar with what that is? Hopefully you will be now. So let's talk about it. Emotional lability, if you don't get anything from this, I want you to remember, emotional lability refers to rapid and intense mood changes. Rapid and intense mood changes. Someone switches and we'll see an example of this from one end of maybe being calm and sedate to being just very disrupted and upset, maybe angry, maybe crying, just in a short period of time. And many times it's unprompted, crying suddenly or uncontrollably, okay, laugh or become angry without a clear or proportional trigger. Someone that you may know or may have treated, I want you to think about someone. See, some of these individuals are just thought to be drama kings or drama queens, but they're experiencing real emotions. I don't know if you've been around someone who has had rapid change at a drop of a dime. They're just crying and all emotional about what to you seems to be nothing. And then the next moment, they're just carrying on like nothing ever happened. Okay, that's emotional lability. Rapid switches, laugh or become angry without a clear struggle to regulate or control their emotions. And now that DBT has been in place, this term emotional lability is also interchangeably used with the term dysregulation. So if you're looking at emotional lability, dysregulation, we're going to kind of be falling into the same category here. So what we did, and we got to wrap it up. What we did with the supervisees is we gave them a real life scenario, real life type of scenario, something that they can identify with. And here we had a scenario with a 25-year-old woman who was performing poorly as a server is called out for her disrespectful behavior. She becomes defensive and upsets the entire table at the restaurant. A male diner says to her, I really believe that you are a good person. Because what's happening here is she was disruptive, she was causing a lot of trouble, she upset the table. And this is not in here, but she's saying, hey, you know what? I've never had any problems. I've never had any problems with you. Are the first person people to ever have problems with me. I don't have problems. I don't really see what's going on today with you all while you all are complaining. But she had been very rude. I really believe. But then someone at the table says, you know what? They notice that she's becoming very defensive. And what does defensiveness mean? When someone becomes defensive, as a therapist, it's important that we don't counter transfer when we see our clients becoming defensive, even in therapy. It's something common that you might see with the individual that has a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And it's something that we need to be regulated on so that when we see it, we don't take it personal when it seems like we're not being received. Okay. So the person became defensive. What's that all about? Okay. Became defensive. And as they were becoming defensive, the individual who was at the table noticed that, you know what, it seems like this person is becoming dysregulated. They're not understanding even what they did at this point. They have shifted into a defensive mode to where any point to rationalize the situation is far gone. It's not going to happen. So the person at that point was able to identified that the person was being defensive, and they said to them, I really believe that you are a good person despite what has been said. And then I really think that you're a good person. And then just abruptly, the person responds and says, I am a good person. I am a good person. I really am. And then they begin to cry uncontrollably, saying that they are a good person. I am a good person. They don't understand. I really am a good person. What just happened here? We want to process this really quick. I got to end in like 2 minutes. Okay. What just happened here? This is an example, a prime example of someone who might be experiencing dysregulation or emotional lability. Okay, we're having a sudden change in our emotions, a rapid and intense mood change that may seem exaggerated or maybe not so understood. Okay, so let's ask a couple of questions, and this is what I like to challenge the group: is like, okay, how do we treat this? How do we work with someone who is having these types of symptoms? Okay, and so one of the first questions that we might ask is, what might the subject's sudden change of emotion indicate? We already talked about dysregulation, but what did this sudden change? What did it indicate? What if this was your client and they were telling you this story? What would you presuppose that might this change of emotion might indicate? And here's some options to consider. Her sudden emotional shift from defensiveness to vulnerability and crime may point out what? that she has difficulty regulating her emotions. It may also point to trauma. Many trauma survivors, and that's what I would be thinking if I saw this, if I'm experiencing this. I'm thinking trauma. Anytime someone's overly defensive or will blow up the spot, make a big scene. Usually, I want you to, when you see that moving forward, whether it's in practice or not in practice, I want you to see that as trauma. There's a great potential that this person is responding to having been exposed to trauma and being easily dysregulated. Again, that's when that sympathetic nervous system starts to kick in, and we go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? All right. So, common trauma, individuals with mood or personality disorders. So, this person might have BPD. That's something that we want to evaluate if it's our client. What is defensiveness all about? We want to profile that. Defensiveness is often an attempt to change someone's perspective. You're thinking a certain way about me. I don't want you to think that way. So I become defensive and I start maybe sometimes over explaining, or I may become, get upset. I may start to gaslight you or something like that, right? That's all a part of being defensive, right? So we're going to skip along. I want to look at this one. How about like her statement? Well, okay, ooh, we don't have time. I gotta skip to this one. Okay, her statement, they don't understand. What does this hint? They don't understand. What is likely happening here? Well, it's possible that she's having deep feelings of being misunderstood. They don't understand. Obviously, if they don't understand, I don't think that I'm being understood. Okay. So that's something that's happening there that has happened to her. And then maybe that's why when she's being stated like you're a good person, okay, when she's being affirmed that she's a good person, um, and I'm gonna just go up here. I'm a good person. What does her reaction suggest? I'm a good person. Her exaggerated reaction suggests that she doesn't fully believe she's a good person. It's almost like she's having to be validated, and you're giving a thumbs up. Yeah, you are a good person, and you're saying it, so you do see it. I am a good person. Like there's doubt. And what does that tell us about her possible background? The affirmation from the male diner triggered a deep internal conflict. If I were truly good, I wouldn't be acting this way. So sometimes defensiveness, sometimes these emotional lability, dysregulation is rooted in shame. And that's where we get back here to the shame part of it. And again, this can often stem from deep feelings of being misunderstood, unseen, or invalidated, which often stems from childhood emotional neglect, criticisms, or unstable attachment. This, I'm going to end it right here, you all. I'm going to end it right here because we're about at time. And what we did is I would ask my supervisees questions about these particular scenarios, and we would just go through it, let them answer it. That's the thing, is that when you're going through this, you want to test their competency, see what they know and what they can share with you in experience. Just before I go, I want to let you know about a free continuing education that we are having on August 9th. The subject is tuning in music therapy insights for social workers. We have Stephanie presenting for us on this topic, and we're hoping that you can attend. If you need more information about that, let us know. You know, if you're part of Social Workers of Alabama, you get a good discount for this, and you know what that is. All right. And then we have also our supervisor training. We had a great training that we ended on uh earlier last month, and we have another supervisor training scheduled for November 3rd and 4th. Come and join us. And then lastly, we have the DSM-5 CEU training that's online on demand. Check that out. You can take it at any time, stop at any time, do what you like to do. But we're going to end it for today. We hope to see you all again next week, and I hope that this has been helpful. Y'all take care.